Welcome back to Out of Crazy Town. I am your host, Jackie Miller. I am welcoming country music star, entrepreneur, and author Stephanie Quayle on this episode. Stephanie received a phone call that her boyfriend had died in a plane crash. What unfolded from there revealed the truth about who he was and just how toxic her relationship had been. Stephanie walks us through her journey of self-reflection, self-discovery, and how she learned what healthy love is. Stephanie's book, Why Do We Stay? How My Toxic Relationship Helped You Find Freedom, is co-written with Dr. Keith Campbell, an expert on narcissism, and is a source of wisdom, validation, and education for anyone who is or has been in a toxic relationship. Hello, Stephanie Quayle. Thank you so much for joining me on Out of Crazy Town.
Hello. One ticket out, please. It is so great to get this time together. Thank you for having me.
This is so awesome. You are a little different than a lot of my guests. We don't often get country music stars on the show, so this is really cool.
That's very, very kind. You know, country music is like the perfect place for these songs to land, you know. It's really wild that I never wrote about what I wrote in the book, like until this last album. I mean, I've been writing songs since I was a preteen, you know, in my little drama and three chords, never touched this subject until the last album. So it's really something.
It's so interesting. You're right. Because I mean, after reading the book and seeing how long that relationship went on and then how long it's been. And yes, I read your latest album, On the Edge, is about this. I'm like, oh, you're just now.
I know. It's so, I'm going to trust that the timing is meant for greatness and how our paths get righted, even though we take every wrong turn or the super long way. You know, because it was, and we can get into a little bit of the story behind the story, you know, when the tragic plane crash happened, you know, he had a 12-year-old daughter who we were raising together. And so in that moment, I mean, this is 2009. There's no social media. It was a different time. And so my thing really was protect this little girl at all costs. I'll get to me. And then you've got, you know, the betrayal that happens 5 days after at the memorial service, where we're in this sea of people I don't recognize. And there's a lot of women, and come to find out I'm not the only woman in this man's life that I've been building a life with. And so then it was like, oh, I can live in mad, seething betrayal, trusting no one. That is a place I could survive. Grief, sadness, heartbreak, that was, you know, that had to be put aside. Sure. And so when I lived in LA I was there for 10 years, and that's where I had met him. And when I finally moved to Nashville in November of 2011, I would just gloss over the LA years, which is like the first song on the album is called The Lost Years. That was kind of my way of just avoiding the conversation at all costs, even in the press, because I didn't know how to touch it without going into all of it, right? Like there's no real, like, how do we surface talk about this very traumatic situation? At the time, we didn't really have the terminology like we do now. I mean, now everyone's talking about narcissism and toxic relationships and all the terms, you know. I think, I don't know how you felt, but I felt a lot of shame because at the end of the day, I stayed, right? I didn't leave my first toxic relationship. He died. Then the one that followed that, I finally left, but again, I stayed too long. And so I think with that, it's just like this little Rubik's Cube where you can't just remove the stickers, which I did as a child. I just moved the stickers around. I'm like, no, we can get to the solution much faster. Now they've since, you know, learned the ways that people could move the stickers. You know, it's just one of those things that I couldn't get sorted until I got it sorted. And that really came from this young woman who was no longer a 12-year-old mourning her father. She was now in her 20s, navigating her own healing through her artwork. And that is what led me to borrow courage from her to go, okay, I have to get these out in the one place I know, like the back of my hand, which is music and my songs, even if no one hears it. So that then led to full exposure, full disclosure, okay, we're going to all the places that we usually sweep under the rug and avoid at all costs. And I realized I was far from an island. everyone and a lot of people have dealt with something similar, if not, maybe not the, post-mortem,
Sure.
but the staying too long and the toxicity that can happen when we think we're the problem and
Yeah.
when we're convinced that we are through the means of narcissistic people.
Yeah.
And then that led to doing my podcast and short film, really, again, just trying to share more about the music, because it was like, wait, what? We've known Stephanie Quayle, this version, for the last umpteen years. What is this? And so it was, okay, we gotta peel back the layers. And then the book, really peels back the layers.
Which is so awesome. This is a great segue because there are, well, first of all, there's so many things you said there. Yes, you cannot surface talk this, because peeling back the layers yourself and diving into how you got there, all the red flags we ignored, then like you said, why do we stay so long? It's too impossible to surface talk. But the book is amazing for a couple of reasons. One, I love the format. You wrote it with Dr. W. Keith Campbell, who is a professor at University of Georgia. He's an expert in narcissism. He has all the degrees from all the great universities. And it's super cool because you get to go through your story. I just want the readers to understand this. I haven't seen a book like this before. And then you have Dr. Campbell jumping in with his expertise and the psychology behind it. So it's really cool.
So cool. And wasn't initially intended like that. But as we started to write the story, we recognized that there was a bigger conversation that needed to happen. And how Keith came into my life is the most wild, serendipitous, like, that divine orchestration only makes sense in hindsight, right?
Absolutely.
And he what I love is he just breaks it down in such a simple form. One of the very first times he and I talked over Zoom was I think it's different when it comes from an expert professional PhD professor than like our mom or dad, who are just saying like, this guy's all wrong. This guy's a sociopath or psychopath or narcissist. We hear these terms that our friends and family say, because usually they have like that's one of the flags, and everyone's like, hey,
hello,
there's a situation here.
Yeah.
But because he was so removed and has that expertise, when he told me those same things, it finally gave me closure in a way of like, it really wasn't me.
It really wasn't you.
And it really had nothing to do with me. I was just the person in this circus.
Yeah.
I wasn't the cause of it. And now hopefully through this and being able to share it, we'll be able to help a lot of others from shoring up that time, right? Because
absolutely,
I didn't have this book when I was in it.
And you're right. The time span, it's great. It's such a, back in 2009, you're right, there was no terminology around this. And I think even when I filed for divorce in 2018, it was just, terminology was just coming on the scene. And now it's exploded, thank goodness. And there's so many more resources out there for us. But getting back to your book, I love because it just opens with a bang. It says that you get
literally,
literally a kaboom. And you get a call that your boyfriend has died. And there's even a little blurb in there where you mentioned the 24 hours leading up to this phone call. And you kind of hint at the roller coaster that you're on with the emotions, the high highs and then the low lows. And a friend actually says to you, why do you stay? And so what happened in that 24 hours before?
Yeah. You also, writing the book, I had to keep checking myself, because how long is 24 hours, right? Because it was the night before. And I kept thinking that had been, like, I was like, how many hours is 24 hours? I mean, I can do math, obviously. I mean, no,
it's narcissist math though. So it's different.
Even shorter amount of time, because the night before, so this was a Tuesday night, I am with the love of my life. We are out on a date. I am not spontaneous. I'm better. I'm trying to, relinquish the reins, but I'm pretty planned in my spontaneity. And in this case, I was just feeling like, oh, let's just go to Vegas. let's just go to Vegas. Don't worry. I'm not going to try to marry you. I'm just, I just feel so lucky. The night before is what I said to him. And so because there were thunderstorms, we weren't able to fly his little plane to Vegas. No, the storms essentially were very, it was like they were protective storms. They protect from what could have been a whole different set of circumstances. So cut to the next morning, it's like business as usual. He's now in his state where he's, very dismissive. And I'm like, it couldn't have been more opposite from the night before. And my dear friend who unfortunately just passed away, Michelle, she just says like, I will listen to you for the rest of my life, but you're never going to leave him. And it's like, I didn't even know the potency of those words at the time.
Yeah.
So in it. And then you go through the motions of the day. I go to pick up his daughter from school like every other day. And our last conversation was about 2 hours before the crash. And when I got the call, I was, making us dinner and I was getting ready to go perform. Like it's just, they were, she's working on her homework. I'm cooking dinner. I'm trying to be all things,
Yeah.
And I still had on my running clothes. Those, I had on like one of those little body bands, like the sweat bands. I'm like, I'm going to get extra sweaty today.
Yep.
And I still had that on. I even remember having that on. I know that's such a random detail, but
it's not though, because the vivid memory around something so catastrophic and traumatizing does make sense.
Crazy, right? This is 15 years ago. So when I got the phone call, they didn't tell me he had died. They just said, there's been an accident. So in that moment, Jackie, I just wanted to get this daughter, this young girl to her dad. And so I threw her in the car and I just drove like a bat out of hell to get her to her dad's side in the event that there was still a chance, right? Now, on the way to the airport, called my dad because I was like, Dad, you got to find out what's going on. Like, and he already knew, but he wouldn't tell me because I'm driving.
Yeah.
Like
no.
miles an hour. And he's just like, steady.
Right decision. Yeah. Yeah.
Steady, get to, so we got to Santa Monica Airport where the crash happened and just ran to the side of the runway and the cops wouldn't let us any further. So the second song on the album, Like She Is the album is chronological and it takes you through, and it's the only love song on the album, but it's really moment by moment what we experienced. And we're the only two people that have this crazy experience of those last moments of her father's life.
Sure.
So it's just, it's strange. I can't remember yesterday, but I can remember that day
For sure. And how long were you guys together?
Well, if you were asking him, I don't know.
Here we go. Right? Yeah.
Because I have it in my brain as 4 years. We started dating in 2005. He died in 2009. So that's what I have in my brain. I am sure that I was the other woman on the front end now. And I am not sure if I was the other woman to the other women, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was, even though I was the picket fence, right? I was the safe. I was the one living with him, raising his daughter with him.
That's what's so mind-blowing, and maybe we can get a little bit more into it, but the fact that you were the other woman on that level with your helping raise the daughter. I mean, this guy was good.
Oh, he was good. He was really good. I mean, and he was attractive and charismatic and just
all the things.
Men wanted to be around him. They just wanted to be in his presence, and women wanted him. And so I think that's why I missed some of those flags of his interaction with the women, because he was like that with everyone.
Sure.
He had this charisma with everyone that I just didn't. I would tend to lean more into like why is that woman versus why I don't know. I just it would vacillate. And then of course, I got deemed insecure and crazy. So it that just builds and grows. You hear that long enough and you go, well, Absolutely. I'll just keep fixing me.
Yep. Yep. And so speaking of his characteristics, what were also some of the things he did or the lies he told in the beginning that really got you and that now you look back probably as red flags or you recognize?
Well, let's just go to dates. Like the very question you asked, right? Like he was like, create a date. When it came to my memory versus what when he deemed us starting dating,
his rewriting of history, I like to call it.
This blurred line that he definitely had blurry lines. Like my husband now, we've been married almost 9 years, together 10. I mean, we know every date. You know what I mean? Like there's no confusion.
Yes.
No confusion. So that I should have been like, wait a second, guy, but I didn't, right? I'm like, okay, you like that date, whatever. I just completely, I glanced, I just was so enamored and so in love with him that I gave him so much room to be blurry.
Right. And so on this roller coaster that they put us on, usually they'll know, did you have inklings or times when you really were kind of showing like, wait a minute, something isn't right, or maybe you would ask him one too many questions, and then usually they swing the other way to distract you or love bomb again? Like, what were some of those things he did that would pull you back?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. So it would either be, if I say this is like, how do you know if you're in a toxic relationship? Like step one, I think there's so many step ones, but a lot of time I would catch myself cocking my head and just be like, that doesn't make sense, and I would follow that up with a question. Not like I try not to be an interrogating person. I was just, what, but you just said this, and, and I would get met with, you are so crazy. I actually wore this specifically. So it says the quail right here.
Okay.
He would only call me by my last name. He never called me Stephanie. He never called me Steph. I never heard my name.
That is very telling. Like it was wow. Okay. We could go into that on a whole new episode.
And so in that, I remember like, oh, that's so cute. Right. Cause initially, we met years before we started dating. And so he would call me his little sis, which is a form of grooming, by the way. I didn't know that was, but Keith really helped me understand, like, that's not how you don't go from a family member to a, significant, you know what I'm saying? Okay.
I do.
That's a whole fishy fish. So that was one thing. And then when I would be like, you know what, if you don't want me, it's okay. I'll be all right. And started pulling away. That's when the love bombing, it was really like, and it was when he would love bomb, it was, it's everything you would hope for, but under the complete wrong circumstances.
Sure. For the wrong reasons
you want. Yeah. Wrong reasons. The family you want. I already had my career underway, but I'm going to marry you. We're going to build a family. It's all those things. I'm going to give you everything you want. And
the breadcrumbing, the future faking.
Oh, potentializing. It's so, yes.
Yeah.
So, it's like, where did they get this handbook?
Oh, I always say that there's a Hogwarts school of narcissism, and we need to find out platform 8 3/4 or whatever it is and blow it up. I've said that many times on this podcast. My listeners are probably sick of it.
Yeah, no, true.
But it's true.
And I will say this though, as I'm not going to speak for you, but but I found that as I got stronger in my understanding of myself, the more I did my own work, right? From grief counseling, therapy, reading more books than goodness, right? And just really getting comfortable with myself and not seeking outward, but going, okay, what do we like about this human that we are with for the rest of our lives? Like, let's just get into that. And with that strength came a lot of self-realization, and it just exposes so much more truth. I was enough all along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all along.
You also mentioned too, like as this process unfolded, you started to not know who to trust, or there were issues around that. What happened there? And then how did you sort of develop that muscle where you learned who to trust? That
is probably the hardest muscle to relearn, I think. he died on a Wednesday, Sunday's the memorial, and by Tuesday, we're having the private funeral. And I remember just hiding behind my sunglasses, not because I wanted anyone to not see that I was destroyed, but I wanted to look at everyone through the new lens of essentially everyone had been lying to me, right?
Mm.
And so I looked at everyone with this big bullseye of, I don't trust you and I don't believe you, but I don't want you to see that I don't believe you. So I want to see what you'll say, and went into my like sleuth days. And I think I didn't rebuild that muscle for a while. I kept trying, right? And I fell into my second, the follow-up toxic relationship with the word. So this is how he hooked me. He said, I'm going to teach you that I'm going to be the one to show you that you can trust men again. And I was like, okay.
But boy, that is just such a perfect example of how these guys look for, I mean, you have a bullseye on us, and they just look for that and the vulnerabilities and wow.
Oh yeah. And looking back at it now, I just like, it's so obvious now. In that moment, I was still so broken. I think that, if there was a do-over button, and I don't ever want to do over because it led me to where I am in this moment with the most extraordinary love, not only for myself, but for my family and my husband. So all of those moments, had they not happened, they wouldn't have happened the way it happened.
I agree.
But goodness, like the things I allowed to be said to me, the things that I allowed myself to be treated like, I'll just never do that.
Yeah.
I'll never do that again. And that trust muscle that you talk about, I think only comes from unapologetic boundaries.
Oh,
this person does not level me up or make me stretch to be better. This person is just an anchor and not the good kind, right? Not anchoring in the storm, but dragging you into the storm.
I think it's so interesting that as I'm hopefully not just putting this on you, and I'm wrong, but right, the people pleasing in us, I'm just going to do better. You even describing the like picking up the daughter, making dinner, everything perfect. Yes, many of us were all of those things. And so boundaries are so hard because we feel like we're hurting people's feelings, or we're, if we just make everything okay and we do everything correctly, then it will be all better. And it's just so the opposite. The less the boundaries, the more frantic we are, and the more difficult life becomes.
Completely. And I think one thing that I don't know if you experienced this, but for me, it hit every part of my life. It wasn't just my romantic relationships that were toxic. I had toxic business relationships. I had toxic friendships. And the thing that is hard is that when you do set those boundaries and you do say, you know what, this doesn't work for me. I love win-wins, but if we're compromising ourselves, we're losing. We're losing something of ourselves if we're like having to dumb down or dull our light or put ourselves down to make other people feel comfortable. I don't know. I had definitely done that. It's like, no. And it does get not lonely because I now cherish my alone.
Yeah.
You do watch a lot of people leave when you start putting your boundaries in place.
It's amazing.
It's new territory. And it's also like, well, but if they're leaving, there's a reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is so incredible because you do. I love having you on because your ending was different. Like a lot of my listeners and clients were stuck in divorces or what is called post-separation abuse, which is when a controlling person does lose you, right? And then they pick up all these other weapons to continue to control you because you're out of their reach. But it just goes to show, doesn't matter if you're a country music star or a stay-at-home mom, it's the process is the same. Yes. These guys are the same. Like you said, we have a bullseye on us for reasons that we were throwing up green flags, like, come here, come to me. Yeah. I'll tolerate that. And so it's just so interesting to see.
That's a great word, tolerate.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Because
really
we wouldn't
is.
tolerate it for our friends. That's another, when I think about this, I would be like, hold the phone. If someone was treating one of my friends like these men treated me, and yet I wouldn't do it for myself.
Absolutely. And I think I was judgmental of some people in their relationships while I was in my abusive relationships.
Well, I think, I mean, oh, are you saying you're a human?
Turning that magnifying glass around on yourself is pretty difficult.
Boy, do I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's something.
I have a question about the actual, because this just would blow me away. And I'm so sorry you went through this. He dies on a Wednesday. The memorial service is Sunday, you said. And then are you showing up and there are other women here? How do you eventually come to the realization that you might even be the other women to other women? Or
Right. Well, and the revelation of other women to the other woman to the other women, that came, I think, while I was writing the music. Because I started like going back, right? I started going back at that moment. I had no idea the layers of overlap and,
okay.
things that were happening. I was still in full mourning, grieving. So I just remember saying, evidently, my friends have reminded me that I said this because I have no recollection of saying this.
Makes sense.
Which is real. I'm fascinated by the brain and how it protects from trauma or traumatic moments. I had said to one of my friends, like, and she shared with me, and she's like, no, Steph, like I had to tell you, like tone it down. Really, I don't remember that at all. Wow. But I remember these moments where I had women talking about me in front of me behind my back, which is like, come on, at a public memorial, like, are we that classless? That's just like, I can't even. And then, there was a woman that one of my friends chased after that threw her wine glass at our, we had like what do you call one of those? Like a little video on just repeat, like showing our.
Right. Like a montage video of his life, his photos. Okay.
Yeah. And, where she very aggressively said, this is not who he was. This was not his life. And like throws her glass at the screen at the memorial and runs out. And so my friend goes after her to try to, understand like like, who are you? Who are you? And that, even that, like, I still wonder, like, who was that person, And so it wasn't until I got home that night, I was in the little courtyard of our rental, and my stepmom and my friend, and we're just sitting there, and I'm just smoking cigarettes. I just needed to be numb.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know what kind of smoker does this, but that's what it felt like in my mind. And
right.
One of my friends came over, and she said, you need to move on as quickly as possible. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm still working with the coroner on dental records because there was nothing left. So they have to go through.
Oh, wow.
Right. There was this BlackBerry and I think his shoes. But as far as like when the coroner can actually, without a shadow of a doubt, confirm when there's nothing left is dental records. So I was, like, I remember saying that. And she goes, well, his girlfriend came up to me at the memorial and introduced herself. Not someone it was described as his girlfriend. And so then that switch flipped for me. And then it was just anger, armor, and my whole existence with this person is a lie, is a sham. And I don't trust anyone.
Oh my gosh, this is so mind-blowing because I'm just having this thought that you now have two separate situations of grief happening at the same time. And now they're basically competing for your mind and your body and your emotions. One's trying to be sad. One's now completely pissed off. And now your brain is going back in time, right? And recounting every detail, trying to put it all together. That's like nervous breakdown time.
I think, like, going back, right? Like, if I were to see someone go through what I went through, I think I would pull a time out and say, hey, parents of this person, get them somewhere. Get them somewhere, because this is a doozy. Like, this is not a go back to work in a week kind of situation. And I just had no idea the magnitude of how bad and how traumatic. So I just pushed and forced myself to just get over it, which I obviously did not, and go back to work and just be angry.
Yeah, I bet. And so you had already mentioned that another toxic relationship followed, but what advice do you have, which isn't uncommon,
Yeah, no, I know. I had repeater syndrome, big time.
until we learn our lesson, we
Yeah.
will repeat
We
it,
will
repeat
see.
it, repeat it.
Yeah, yeah.
What advice do you have for people for how to move on and start to live an authentic, amazing life?
Oh gosh. Well, I think first things first is do the work. Don't avoid yourself. I think had I not avoided myself, I probably wouldn't have fallen into that second toxic relationship and then the toxic other relationships, from my business to my friends. Take your time and do the work and just know that there's no getting over it.
Yeah. And what does
There's
work mean
no
to you?
Well, I think, work for me, because I was dealing with the death and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have, I'd lost grandparents, but never like, this. I wish I would have gone to grief counseling immediately. When I have friends or strangers, if I meet a rando on the airplane, which tends to happen, and I'm a talkative person, and I just, if there is an opportunity to share that message of don't wait to get the help, because grief counseling is so powerful and it just helps you understand that grief's process is not linear, even though there's certain things that everyone experiences. Yes, but it's just not and you'll start here and you'll end here. Right. And I think when people have lost someone, it's this strange club that there's just this understanding that happens. Yeah. And I never would say that had I not gone through it. I would never run to grief counseling. And I was fortunate in that here in Nashville, there's a hospice called Alive Hospice, and they have a really incredible grief counseling program. And one of my friends had lost her loved one and suggested I go there. But this is like 2+ years after.
Oh, wow.
So when I went to them, I just said, look, I don't know where else to turn. Maybe I can be a message of don't wait. And this is why don't wait, because it will catch up with you.
Yeah.
It's not something you can outrun. And I really thought I could.
Yeah.
And really, the time that you can spend with yourself to do whatever work you need to do. I sought out every kind of therapy. I went to emotional rehab. I was like, clearly, I am the problem. So I was complicit. I made the choices. I own that. A lot of times we can put a lot on others, and bad people are going to continue to be bad.
Yes.
But the stronger and smarter, that's not in an intellectual way I say that, because this happens to smart people all the time.
Oh, I always say that my clients are the most intelligent people I've ever met. Yeah.
Yeah. This is about understanding the nuance of manipulation, really. And only by our own meters getting stronger and be like, that doesn't sniff out right. And I'm not even going to waste my time finding out.
I love the word nuance, because yes, it is subtle. It's insidious. That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's the plan. Otherwise you don't, if it's too sudden, even someone without boundaries might be like, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very insidious. I hate this analogy, but it is kind of like the frog in the water.
I say it a lot as well. It really is. If you put
it jumps out. Yeah.
It would jump right out. But if you slowly turn up the heat, we'll cook to death. And that's.
Yeah. And, I think about that a lot, because I could have been on that plane 24 hours before.
Yeah. That's the thing that struck me as your story unfolded, and the universe, God, whoever anyone, believes in out there, that was definitely, someone watching out for you, Stephanie. And I guess the other question that I have is, now that you're married now, and it's, you said that you're so happy, and congratulations. I'm so happy for you. What was so different about your relationship when you met your husband now versus the previous toxic relationships, how they started?
There was no drama. There's no drama. He's just 100% who he is. Mm. And I think the biggest component, when I first met him, I was in toxic city. I was in the toxic number 2, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, where are you headed?" And I'm like, well, I'm headed to emotional rehab. And he meant, no, like, what state are you headed to? He got me full, like there was no try. I had all my try is gone.
Mm.
And so he got me in just my most raw moment. And I was convincing him that toxic number two hadn't done all the things that toxic number two had done. And clearly I was the problem. So when he met me, it was just such a, like, whoa, she's got a lot going on,
Yeah.
But when we did find ourselves both single and in this moment of just getting to be in each other's presence and feeling, oh wow, there's something here. I had already started a lot of the work, and I was very like, oh, I'm scared to do it wrong again.
Sure.
And that trust can only happen by allowing it to happen, and also recognizing that I come with a lot of stuff and have to be really upfront and not negotiate with that, but say like, hey, if I'm out of line, there could be some reasons why I'm very, this, how do I trust?
Yes.
And the more I was able to trust myself and build upon myself, then it got a lot. And he's very patient because he had every reason to go like, this is just a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. My boyfriend, it's the same thing. I mean, we laugh now. It's been about 5 years, but he was not allowed to joke around with me about anything ever, which is hard on a relationship because we did laugh about a lot. But if it was even like, did you realize you put the scissors in the refrigerator? You couldn't even say that to me.
Yeah. I understand that very much. I had a little like convo with my husband prior. I was just like, you can call me anything. Anything. Never call me crazy. That is my trigger word. I will be gone. There will be no, I'll just be gone.
Yep.
Because it had left it was so tattooed on my person. So I get that. Are you able to joke now?
Oh my gosh, it's all we do. There have been so many credits built up of love and affection and compliments and just acknowledgement for all you do and who you are and what an amazing person. And there's so many credits built up, I call them, all day long, every day, that now if you say, you left the scissors in the refrigerator, do we need to go to the doctor? You know what I mean?
Right.
Now I would laugh until I cried, but yeah, it took a long time and a lot of patience. And I love what you said about no drama. Just listening to or reading the very first part of your book where you talk about the hi and hey, let's go to Vegas. And then the cold shoulder the next day. Oh my God, the silent treatment I endured. That roller coaster right there, which is, you didn't go to Vegas for a reason because the storm, but then there was still that high. You would expect the next day there would still be this love and energy and whatnot. And so to wake up with cold shoulder and you're like, what did I do? What did I do? And that roller coaster, which isn't even like some big major thing they did, but yet it is.
Yeah. What did I do wrong again?
And now having somebody that wakes up and is the same person every day with
oh my gosh. And just being able to be, I remember when David said husband, when I call him husband, but his name is David. I remember he said, like, I love you unconditionally. And when he said that, it just felt so foreign because I had experienced versions of love with so many conditions. Absolutely. And that's not how we're meant to spend our life, being in this constant state of what am I going to do wrong today?
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on to share your story.
Awesome. I want to hang out. We need to hang out.
Could we hang out? I love Nashville. I plan on going there. I don't know if you're a football fan. My boyfriend is an agent for NFL players, and he does have a Tennessee Titans. So,
well, see, you got to let me know. Your boyfriend will appreciate this. So when I met David, he's Mr. Sport guy, and I didn't grow up in that world. So he played football and baseball. And he would say to me things like, when we first started dating, he's like, with my career, he'd be like, hey, did you move the sticks today? And I'm like, what does that mean? What are we talking about? Is this like a positive? Is moving sticks like good? I don't have
a reference.
Zero reference. And so now, and there's so many baseball terms. I'm like, oh my God. So I have a very sporty, attempt in my heart. Yes, I will be there. I will.
Awesome.
If you're in town, please let me know. That would be so much fun. And yes, I have a husband that's all the languages of all the sports. Yeah.
It's so funny. It's so funny. Well, if you're in LA, same invitation.
Yes,
Would
love
love
that.
to hang out. It's been awesome. Hey, you guys, everyone, go and order now Why We Stay by Stephanie Quayle. And then it's also co-written with Dr. Campbell. It is on pre-order, will be out April 30th. Is that correct?
Yes. And new music's coming out with it. So, yes.
Oh, that's so awesome. So go to stephaniequayle.com as well. And it's Stephanie with an IE. And you can check out all her music and, you know, more about the book and whatnot. And all of, on the show notes, all of your Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, everywhere else people can find you, will be there. Thank you again for sharing your story, Stephanie.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay. Hopefully we'll see you soon.